Hey everyone, my name is Rebecca Conde Jacobson, and I'm your European PTA President from 2020 to 2022. And I am actually doing presenting to you today the President and Vice President training. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to be going over is what is the purpose of the PTA? The first part, one of our most important ones, is to promote welfare for our children. And yes, of course we do it at school, but we also need to make sure that we're promoting welfare in the community, all throughout our community, and at home as well. So, and then our next point, our second point, is to secure laws that are created to protect and care for our students and our youths. So, and that's where it goes back into promoting for our welfare for our children. And then now we're going to get to our third point is promoting and creating relationships. So this is really important because when we think about relationships, we are helping create relationships between home and school and also with our parents and educators. Because if we don't create those relationships, how successful can we be? And this is why this is one of our main purposes. And it goes into our next point. Our fourth point is creating unity. Because without unity, how are our students, our school, going to succeed? They can't without unity. And this is the reason why we're creating relationships and we're making sure we're having promoting welfare. So, all right, let's go ahead and move into our next slide. So, our next slide is what it means to be a PTA president. So, there's three main points and they all relate to each other. So, remember is this. We speak as a leader. Remember, when you speak, you're not just speaking on behalf of yourself or your board. You are speaking on behalf of your school, your community, and most importantly, your students. So your voice is one voice that represents everyone. And it's one of the most important voices. So don't forget that, how much you can make a difference. And by using that one voice, we then get it to advocate, to promote positive change. And so through this one voice, that when we're speaking for everyone, we'll make sure that we're making a difference and we're promoting this positive change. And through advocating, we get to our third point is providing programs. And our programs are for making sure that we enhance the education and encourage growth. Because that is one of our main points, and that's what we do as PTA. Is one of our goals is to make sure that we provide education or tools to enhance children's education and to encourage creative growth. Okay? So remember, always remember these three main things. This is what we do as a leader. And by doing this, this will help you with accomplishing goals and many other things we're going to go over in this presentation. Okay? So let's get on to the next part. So, how does the PTA accomplish its goals? It's through four parts. And each part is not, you gotta remember, even though it's broken into four parts on this slide, does not mean that they're separate. So we have first the volunteer. Our volunteers, that's pretty much what our PT is made up of, is volunteers. Without our volunteers, there's no PTA. So then our school and community. So by having volunteers, we're able to help create change, more importantly, influence change, and provide additional resources, and also support our school and the community. So that's where our volunteers help. And because of our volunteers, we're also able to advocate. You're going to be hearing advocate a lot, and unity as well. So advocating is very important because this is how we speak on behalf of our school, our students, our community. And remember, don't ever be afraid to advocate for change and to help make sure our students and everyone has the best access to be successful. And most importantly is being a role model. By you being a positive role model, you'd be surprised how you can help bring in more volunteers, how you can influence change and make difference within the school and the community, and also make a difference in advocating and making a change there. So let's go ahead. So we see what we do, some of these goals. So now let's look into what we do as presidents. So what is the roles of the presidents, the vice presidents? Well, the president oversees the unit organization and then also oversees all the meetings. So they're pretty much running it. And then also they oversee the membership. So this is like all of our memberships who are coming in, our members, and then also the governance. So this might be your bylaws and your standards affiliations, making sure that you are adhering to it. Also, the president is in charge of making sure that everyone is included. Inclusiveness here. That we aren't just having just for example, I'm not just going to have just my close friends be on this board. No, everyone has a chance to be a volunteer on the board or even sit in a position, and everyone has a say. Also overseeing elections, so making sure that we're running properly according to the state or the national level. Okay. Also, the president is oversees to make sure that your board members are getting the proper training they need in order to be successful. Because without it, how do you know what you're supposed to be doing? And also, the president oversees the finances. They don't balance the books, but just making sure that the finances are getting done properly. Okay. So now we're going to look into what the vice president oversees. And so remember, is the vice president steps in when the president isn't available. Also, some vice presidents might be doing some specific duties, and I'll go into this a little bit more in another slide. And then the vice president also assumes responsibilities for specific, we have performing specific duties and assumes responsibility for other duties too. So it might be you're doing additional, And then they also represent the president in their absence or upon request. So there's different times where you could be stepping in. So remember that. Also, one important thing about our president and our vice president is that you two work together. You two are a team that you guys need to be working together all the time. And it's important that you guys are a team and working together, because if you guys are butting heads and not, it does show and it can change how your board is. So you guys need to make sure that you're working as a team and being unified, because that's how we create unity. Okay? So let's go ahead. So now you know what it is to be a leader. But now let's go into what you need to do once you've been elected. Okay? So, where do you start? The first thing you're going to do is remember, all these things that I'm going over here are going on pretty much during the May to June time frame, okay? Or more May to actually August time frame. So I will tell you exact time frames. So the first thing you should be doing is contacting the EPTA with any change in leadership. This is more of, if this can go on actually on during any time of the year. So let's say, for example, your president has PCS'd and you have your vice president stepping in. So you need to let us know that who's the new leader. So we're making sure that we're communicating to the proper person. Then, and this also will go on once you guys have conducted elections, making sure we know who they are too. So the next thing is to verify your audit, making sure that at the end of the term, more specifically for the treasurer, that the audits gets done before they hand over the books. Okay. And once after the audit is done, then you do your accounts and you sign everyone, you change the account holders out. Also, this is something important, is make sure your bylaws are correct and adhere to the EPTA standards, because we will send out when we change stuff. So make sure that you're up to date, and don't be afraid to reach out to our bylaws chair or our communication or even me, and we can help you with it, okay? So once after you've been elected into this position, the next thing you need to be doing is create and get approval for a calendar and your programs that are going on for the next year. Because once you have an idea of what you want to do, this is when you start to create your budget. And this will help support your goals and make sure you stay within your limits. Because you don't want to have a budget of $1 million and you only have 20,000. So we want to make sure that we have a realistic budget too. Okay. So once after you've created your budget and your calendar and you've reviewed your bylaws and made sure they're correct, you need to make sure that your board, your whole board, approves the budget and the bylaws and the calendar, and also your membership. Because remember, they also have a vote too, all of your general membership. So make sure they vote and they get heard as well. And then normally your approval for that will be going on during the beginning of the school year. But the creating the roster of elected officers for the next school year should be done and turned in by August 1st to the European PTA. And our membership, our vice president of membership, should be able to tell you where exactly you can submit that. All right. And then we have, just because we have our certain deadlines that you have to turn stuff into us, remember, you also have to turn things into your private org office. So you need to make sure you know what dates they are requiring that you turn in your monthly financial reports and your minutes. Because even though you have a good standing with us here at the state, you also have to have a good standing with the private org in order to still be to run as a local unit, okay? So keep that in mind. So we're going to go ahead and move into our next one on how to set up a board, okay? So how do we set up a board? So I'm going to give you an example of a local unit that I was on and how we set up the board. So remember, you do not have to set up your board the way I do, but it's just to show you how you can do it. You can do it however you want, but this is how we did it. So obviously the president is at the top, and then the rest, the next 4 positions, are part of the executive board. We have our first vice president, the second vice president. So remember, is you don't always have to have 2 vice presidents. You can have 1. I'll go a little bit, explain a little bit more once we get past the executive board on why we have 2 vice presidents and how each of their roles are different. Then the next executive board member would be the secretary, and then our treasurer. So now this is where our vice presidents were really important for our local unit. Was we had the vice president, the first vice president was in charge of all profit fundraising kind of committees or chairs. So the first vice president would oversee the spirit chair or chairs or committee, would also be in charge of overseeing the fundraising chair, the picture chair, and the yearbook chair. Okay, and then our next, our second vice president would be in charge of everything that's nonprofit. That would include our spell and bee, our memberships, our program chairs. So those are any certain programs, and also any of our nonprofit items. That would be our like you're doing grants and other stuff like that that you're bringing to the school, or that is where your vice president chair came, or second vice president came in. So remember, this is just an example of how you can do it. But remember, just because the vice presidents oversaw different certain groups of chairs, doesn't mean that the president doesn't help out. Our president helped out in every single area to make sure that we ran smoothly. So just because you're at the top doesn't mean that you don't help out everywhere else, okay? So let's go ahead and go into our next slide. And this is very important. We are all part of one team. So you as the president, whether you're as the local unit president, you then would go to the next, person would be me, the European PTA president. And remember is we're here to support and we're helping you make sure they're successful in adhering to the rules. And just like I'm as the European PTA president or the state president is responsible for making sure you guys are adhering to all the rules and regulations that we had gotten from national, I also have the national president who also does that to me, who makes sure that I adhere to rules, regulations that are set up by the national PTA. So remember, just because we might be working in different groups, where our local unit might be working with a small, just a school, remember that I, as the European president, I oversee all local units. And so that's where I'm supporting all of you. And then my national president, who's Leslie Boggs right now, she's supporting all of the state and districts PTAs. So remember that. We're all one team and we're all here to support each other. Whether you're at the local unit, at the state, or at the national, we're all a team. And the reason why I put our local unit president at top is because you are the one who's the closest to our families. You are important, but remember, we all need to work together. So, and so I'm going to go into how we can be successful. All right. So, being a successful president, these are some of my things that I want to make sure I'm helping you guys know how to be successful, because you want to know why? These are things that I did when I was president, or even as a vice president. I made mistakes, and these are things that I learned over time. So one of my key points is to remember you are a volunteer. That, yes, as a volunteer, you're helping out. Don't put so much work on you that you get burned out, because you need to, yes, you are an important part of the team, but remember you're a volunteer. Second, and this goes back into the first part, being a volunteer, PTA is not a one-man show. We are a team. So when you put too much stress and take on too much, you're going to burn out. So this is the reason why we need to work as a team. And this is where, even from me as your state president, please don't be afraid to talk to me and ask me questions, or even ask for support. I'm here to support you like you're here to support your other volunteers and your unit. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Just like sometimes I can ask help to my national president when I need it. So don't be afraid, and remember, work as a team. And this is another one that I've seen a few times, is make sure that you're promoting positivity, because positivity does make a difference. And you want to make sure that you're obviously we always aren't positive, but make sure that you're positive most of the time, because you would be surprised how much more help you can get, more volunteers to help you. And also makes your team bigger and it makes it easier on you. Another thing is listening to advice. I admit there's been times where I didn't want to listen, and I'm guilty of this too. And we're all at some point have done this. We don't want to listen to advice. But you know what? Listening to advice can sometimes make your life 10 times better and easier. And now going on to my last point is communication. Remember that we need to all communicate with each other, and that's how we make a successful team. Because if we're not talking to each other, if we're not communicating what we need to get done, how do we know that we aren't getting the same message? How How do my executive board know what I need to do or what I expect of them if I don't communicate to them? And same to all my local units. I need to communicate to you. So don't be afraid to communicate, because if you don't communicate, you won't be able to have a successful team. So remember, these are things that I have seen and I have also failed at. And I want to make sure that you, as a president or a vice president or any leader you are within your community, is successful. Okay? So, the road to success from Leslie Boggs. Leslie Boggs is our current for 2019 to 2021 National PTA President, and these are some of her advice that she gives on how to be successful. So the first one is to make sure to carve out time for reflection. Be able to look back at the positive, because sometimes you might think you weren't successful, and you'd be surprised how successful you were. Also, don't be afraid to have active and open questions. Allow it, because you know what? You'd be surprised at how much sometimes you might have missed something, or it's like, wow, I didn't think about that. That's great, and how you could have changed something to make it easier. Also, remember, like again, we are volunteers. This isn't our paid job, so allow yourself to have fun with it. Be playful. Enjoy it. Like I said, remember, we're not paid. We're volunteers. So have fun. Because you know what? When you're having fun, you'd be surprised how many people would want to join in. And set up a system of sharing ideas. Don't exclude ideas. Let everyone promote ideas in, because you'd be surprised that someone might have an idea who you would have never thought of. And seek out the unexpected. Don't be afraid to do something different, because you know what? You might find out that it made it easier, or it made your unit even more successful at its mission. So also, again, and this kind of goes into this last point, was encourage experimentation. Do something different. But remember, the last point that Leslie Boggs has is that she always promotes through all of this stuff is to be hopeful. Stay hopeful. Because when you start to go down, it changes your dynamic. So always be hopeful, because you'd be surprised how much you, as a president, or as a leader, or as a vice president, you make a difference on how you act in front of your board and your volunteers. Because if they see you smiling and you being hopeful, they will spread as well. Okay? So that's important. So let's go ahead and we're going to our resource slide. So remember, I have a link here that is for our standards affiliation. So this is what you need to know in order to keep your board running. And then here's the thing. Communication, like I said before, don't be afraid to communicate with us. So this link to our Weebly site shows everyone in our positions. It has our president, all of our vice presidents, our memberships, our treasurer, our secretary, and even our board, our chairs. Don't be afraid to reach out to them. We have emails that you can contact them and ask questions. And we're all here to help, and that's what we are here to do at the state level. So don't be afraid. And this is the reason why we have contact. And yeah, so at this point, because I know I'm recorded, but I hope you learned and you got some helpful information. But also, if you have questions for me, please don't be afraid to email me at presidentepta@gmail.com, and I will, trust me, don't be afraid to ask me questions about what else that you need to do, because I'm not afraid to go ask one of my board members or my fellow chairs for help. So we're here to support you. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and thank you very much.